Everyone, it's Paige Severe, your natural makeup specialist for women over 30. And today I don't really have like a solid plan, but I thought I would talk a little bit about evening your skin tone using the contour method that I showed last week in a reel to the 10 of you that saw it. I feel like it's, there's always someone who's like, I didn't see that reel, or I didn't see that piece of content. I feel like that's just the name of the game. So last week, I talked about how one little trick to even your skin tone before you apply your foundation is to use a contour shade. And the reason why I was saying contour is because with the Saint line, this cream contour is a little bit more stiff or dense, so it just holds really well versus like the cream bronzer, which I've also suggested. Here, let me swatch them so you can kind of see the difference in color. So this is the Bella bronzer, okay? And it's just a little bit creamier. And that is because you use a lot less when you're using the bronzer. And then the contour, this is Cedar, and this is the color that I used in my tutorial last week. It's more stiff and dense, and that's one thing people always tell me is like, I feel like the contour isn't as creamy as the highlights. It's not supposed to be. You want it to be more of a stiff, dense consistency. So you can kind of see as I swatched it on my hand, it was just like not quite as creamy, right? So that's why I was like, hey, if you've tried the Bella as a kind of like a primer to even your skin tone, and you felt like it didn't last as well, or I don't know, maybe your makeup was moving around a little bit, try the contour, something that has a little bit of warmth in it, like the color Cedar, to even your skin tone with first. I found that the contour worked better on me or lasted longer on me. But I have another thing to show you today. And I just want to preface by saying, I don't show you this to confuse you. I show you this to show you that there are so many different ways to do your makeup. So you guys, for all of you perfectionists out there that are very black and white like me, it's okay to try something new. It's okay to do things a little bit differently. And I don't want this to be like, wait, but you said to do it this way. This is just, what I love to teach is like, this is just another thing to try. This is just another option for you, okay? So a lot of people have told me that they feel like sometimes Bella Bronzer or the Cedar Contour is a little warm. I will admit, I do like to use these colors when I'm using like a self-tanner spray on my face. I've got a little bit more color going on, right? But right now I don't have any self-tanner on. I'm a little bit more fair. And so this color is really great for more of those fair tones. And this is actually a Demi shade, a Demi Sculpt, and it's called NR-1, okay? It is limited edition, but it's an amazing color, and I am begging them to keep it. So you can see it's a little bit more of like a fleshy tone shade. It's just a little bit lighter than that Cedar color. And so this is what I am going to use today to just kind of give a nice little even tone to my skin. So I'm going to take the shape brush. I'm going to use the big round fluffy side, and I'm just going to barely tap, you guys. I say this all the time, but I have to, because you have to know that most people, when they first get this makeup, they always overuse this product. And then they're like, it looks heavy, it feels cakey, it's looking too dark. And it's because people just dig their brushes in or dig their fingers into the product, and they just use way, way, way too much. So the key is just like these little kind of tapping motions. And I'm essentially just kind of adding this NR-1 to areas that are a little bit lighter. So if you had like a lot of melasma or pigmentation, I would actually suggest that if you're doing this method of kind of evening the skin tone with first, I would suggest that you take a smaller end of a brush. I should have grabbed my little hair clip. And you just kind of fill in between the dark spots. You don't necessarily want to put it all over if you've got pigmentation going on, because that's just going to darken the existing pigmentation. So all we're doing when we're evening the skin tone is we're just balancing the light and dark. So I'm just adding a little bit of depth where there is light and leaving the dark as is. Yes, I'm even doing this underneath the eyes, and I'm using the smaller side here. And it doesn't like seem like a lot is happening because the Demi colors especially are more sheer, but that's why I love it, because it's so light on the skin. It becomes like undetectable makeup, but it just gives you this beautiful kind of even glow. It's always a little tricky to do this in my phone, you guys. Normally I have a mirror that I'm, you know, up close and personal with. I can really kind of see, but just kind of going around, finding the lighter spots on my face, and just kind of evening everything out, okay? You can even take a little bit of this color or a bronzer shade, bring it down the neck if you want to warm up the neck a little bit. Sometimes I'll even just take like straight up Bella bronzer and bring that down as well. And that is truly what is so like amazing about this line, is just the customization that you can get based on your specific needs. So this is a Saint line for those of you who are new, and I do free custom color matching. So you can go to colormatch.pagesevere.com or go to the link in my bio, and I will give you same day shade recommendations for this palette. Okay, so we've kind of evened everything out. We're gonna go over a few things today. Someone had asked me in my stories yesterday, how do you cover acne, dark spots, pigmentation? I might need to make like a whole separate thing on that, but I will talk about it as I do my makeup. Okay, so now that that's done, I am going to go in with a little bit of a cooler contour shade to actually contour my features out. And I'm using a color called Astoria. So Astoria is a little bit more of like a neutral tone. It's a little deeper, has a little bit more green in it. Okay, and all these colors look very dark and scary online and even in the tin because of how pigmented they are. Like this contour shade, I think I've had for 4 or 5 months and I've barely like made a little dent in it. So they last a really long time. So all I'm going to do is just barely tap into my contour shade. And then this is a really good hack if you have a lot of pigmentation or large pores. Instead of like swiping on your contour, just like kiss your cheekbones like this. And I love the shape brush for this. So I'm just kind of barely tapping it on. I'm gonna do the same thing around my forehead. I'm just gonna kind of tap. And you can see, again, that I'm just using a very minimal amount. And just a reminder, a lot of people will say, I feel like the contour is more stiff, it's not as creamy. Creams in general are very susceptible to temperature. So if your creams are cold, they are gonna be a little stiff. So just take a blow dryer and warm it up, or just take your finger and kind of warm it up. But again, I'm just kind of doing this tapping, stippling motion. And it just gives you like the prettiest, softest contour application. All right, now you can use a more detailed brush for your nose, or you can just kind of pinch the bristles like this. And I just kind of go down the center of the nose. Notice I'm like right on top of the bridge. I'm just leaving like a really thin line of light here. You don't want your contour to be too far out on your nose, otherwise you're just gonna make your nose look really big. Okay. Now at this point, you could go ahead and add your foundation shades, okay? So Saint's foundations are called highlights. People always get really confused by this. They're like, wait, what's the foundation? What's the concealer? What's the color corrector? They're all called highlights, but when I color match you, I give it a name so you know how to use what color for what. So if you have a color correcting highlight, you have a main highlight or a main foundation shade and then a brightening highlight, okay? And so in this case, you would take like your main color or your color corrector if you need it, and you would just kind of start to stipple that on everywhere the contour is not. A lot of people got confused on that on my reel last week because I said, you know, apply the contour all over and then put your highlight or your foundation everywhere the contour is not. So all I'm saying is you don't put foundation or highlight all over your entire face. That's the beauty of this line, is the contour serves as secondary coverage. So you don't need to go back in and, you know, add another layer there. You would just apply it where the contour is not, right? So in those empty spaces. But I actually want to do a foundation-free look today. So instead of using foundation, I am going to use what are called Demi correctors. And you guys have probably seen me talk about this. Okay, so the Demi correctors look like this. And one thing I want to get across with the Demi correctors is that you don't use them on top of the foundation or underneath the foundation because they're a different consistency. They're more sheer, okay? And so if you just, like if you put your foundation on or your highlight on and then you went in and you tried to use your correctors, they're just gonna blend together and it's not really gonna make much of a difference because they're two totally different consistencies. So I always tell people, if you want to do a hybrid method of like foundation, but then just like these color correctors under your eyes or for acne, just don't put foundation in those areas and use these instead. So whenever someone comes to me and they're like, I have acne or scarring, I will tell them, if you want a foundation look, put foundation everywhere except for where those scars or acne areas are, like mine. I've got some nice little scars. And use the Demis instead. So that's what I'm gonna do. So the cool thing about Demi correctors is we're using color theory, okay? And so most people are going to use the same Demi colors for the same things. So for acne spots, let me zoom in here a little bit. You'll notice that they're usually, like when they're more fresh, they're going to look more red. But it's not a true red, okay? You're not using a green corrector. Do not go and buy a green Demi corrector. You actually need a yellow orange because redness on the skin is actually excess purple and blue. So I'm going to take a little tiny little dab of this Y01 right on this little spot. And what I love about using Demi on acne spots is that because it's so sheer, and it's so precise in its color, you don't need to layer foundation over the top of it. And it will just kind of make these little spots disappear. And if it's looking kind of chalky or it's not totally covering when you use a certain color, you know, okay, I probably need more orange or I need to go a little bit darker. So sometimes, these are like the two main colors I use right here, Y01 and 03. Sometimes I'll just barely tap into my Y01, barely tap into my 03, and I'll just kind of mix them together because as acne starts to fade and become a scar, it starts to get more blue in it than purple, right? It becomes less vibrant. Purple is more vibrant, which means you need more yellow. Blue is darker, which means you need more orange. So that's all you need to know. You're basically going to use Y01 or 03 on your acne depending on the stage that it's in. So usually Y01 in the beginning, and then a mix of Y01 and 03 is it's like in that middle stage, and then 03 when it's like at the darkest point of its healing phase. All right, makes sense? So just remember those two colors, Y01, 03. And then you're just going to tap that on and tap off the excess. And it will just cover any little spots so beautifully. And what I love about using Demi over foundation, again, because it's sheer, it doesn't create like those foundation mounds. You know what I'm talking about? Like when you have an acne spot and you try to like cover it with powder and concealer and corrector and foundation, you just like have this like chunk sitting on your face. And so this gets rid of that. You don't have kind of the bumpy, chunky look. You can just simply correct and you don't have to put any foundation over the top of it. It will just kind of make that spot disappear like magic. It's really cool. And it is a little bit of a learning curve, obviously, in learning how much product to use. Most people will overuse the Demi, and so then they'll say like, oh, it's coming off, it's not lasting. you have to be very, very careful to just use the tiniest amount of product. Okay, so I've got like a little guy here on my jawline. You guys, pregnancy hormones have been just in full swing. And so I like to just use my little Demi colors. So again, you can apply foundation all over, except for on your little acne spots. Like just try to leave those areas clear. And then you can do your Demi everywhere else. But I find that by kind of evening my skin tone first, doing my contour, correcting my little spots, I'm like, oh, I don't necessarily feel like I need foundation. I feel like my skin looks pretty even, but I get that some people still kind of want that full coverage foundation look, but then they also want to cover up the dark spots and the acne, okay? So this is a great hybrid method. All right, let's talk about under eyes. I know a lot of you found me because of my under eye video, and I have a very differing opinion on how I think you should do under eye makeup. Number one, I think that color underneath the eyes is actually really beautiful. And I think the idea of just like whiting everything out looks very unnatural. It might look really good in camera or on a video, but it almost always looks unnatural in person. When I see someone that's used a shade that's like 3 shades lighter underneath their eyes, it's like, all I see is makeup. I don't see their eyes. So my goal is to teach you to do an under eye look that focuses on your eyes and not the makeup, all right? So this is my method that I teach. So you're gonna take this same little brush I've been using for the little acne spots. It's called the spot brush. And I kind of already balanced a little bit with that, the NR-1. So you probably noticed I used just I added a little bit of color in the lighter pockets. So I'm training you to do the opposite of what you've been told. Instead of focusing on the dark, focus on the light first. Now, this NR-1 isn't quite giving me enough pigment that I need for the light section. So I'm going to use a little bit of my bronzer shade just right in those lighter pockets to balance the light and dark a little bit more, okay? So I'm only adding the tiniest bit of bronzer and only in the light spots. So if you have an under eye line like me, or a bag line, or a hollow line, whatever you want to call it, you're just going to add that Bella bronzer. And 90% of people can use Bella bronzer. If you're a woman of color or have a deeper skin tone, you just need a deeper bronzer color. That's it. But I find that this works for most people. Even like those medium to deep ranges. Okay, so again, I've just added a little bit of dark to the light spots underneath the eyes. And isn't it crazy, like how much less distracting my eyes already look? Like that line already looks. So I'm just adding it next to it and around it, but we don't want to go in it because we don't want to deepen that shadow. Okay, and then I'm gonna flip over to the small side. And remember the 03 that we were using for the more blue acne spots? We're gonna use that same color for the bag line. So we're gonna take the tiniest amount, and I'm just gonna find kind of the darkest points within this bag line. And I'm gonna tap that color on there. Do you see the magic? Do you see the magic happening in front of your eyes? It's like I just took 10 years off my under eyes. Okay. And then next to the bag line, I've got a little bit, it's really hard to see in my camera, but in person, it's a little bit more purpley blue, a little bit more on the purple side. So I like to take a neutral yellow -1. It's a Demi sculpt color. So we have our NR -1. I'm gonna take a neutral yellow -1. And you can also use Y01, the same color we used for the acne, It's just a little bit brighter. I don't want to go quite as bright. So let me show you. So Y01, O3, NY -1. So I like to just use a little NY. Some people get scared because these colors are, some of these Demi colors are limited edition, and so they're like, oh, it's a final sale, I don't know if I want to buy it. So then in that case, I'll just tell them to buy the Y01. But I love NY -1. I'm also begging the corporate company to keep this color because it's so good. So I just tap on, I mean, seriously, you guys, the tiniest amount of product. If you can see the product on your skin, especially when you're using the Demi, you've way overdone it. You've used way too much. Okay, now I'm gonna go with the O3 on this other side, right in the bag line. I've had people do this same method with the bronzer, O3 and Y01, and they get amazing results too. And one thing that's helpful, if you can, the first time you're using these Demi colors is to sit in front of a window like I am right now. I don't have any light on me, it's just natural light. And have like your little handheld mirror from your compact and just kind of like move your head around. You can really see kind of anything that looks shadowy or more prominent on your face, you know, almost always has more blue in it. So you're going to use the orange. Anything that looks vibrant, like purpley, red, pinky, that means it has more purple in it. So then you're going to use more of a yellow or a yellow-orange. So I think that's a really cool thing about Demi is that, like I said, most people are going to use the same colors. You don't need to necessarily understand color science. You really don't. You just need to understand, oh, this is dark, that means it's blue, I need orange. Oh, this is bright, it looks red, that means I need yellow-orange. That's all you need to know. Okay. So you just kind of like move around and you'll see where those colors need to go. All right, so typically, I always forget, but I typically do blush before I even do my under eyes or spot treat because I always want a spot treat at the end. So we even the skin tone, we add a sculpt or contour, whatever you want to call it, we do blush, and then we Demi, okay? So just remember those 4 steps. It really is very simple. I have been loving Ruby for the summer. It's like this pretty kind of sheer, bright pinky tone. Look at, it's very bright and lovely. So if you're looking for a good summer color, I love Ruby. You really only need the tiniest amount. Again, for those of you who are new and just hopping on, these are the Saint palettes using 3D foundation and the Demi correctors. You can get a free match in my profile or go to colormatch.pagesevere.com. Okay, and right now they're only available in the US and Canada, but we are going to be expanding to the UK and Australia and Mexico sometime this year. I don't have a date yet, but I do have a wait list in my bio. So go get on that wait list. I will send you an email as soon as I have more details and when everything's live. So that's kind of exciting. All right, such a pretty color. Now, for my lips, I like to take, oops, wrong brush. Let's see, the multitasker brush. And I will just go into the same shade that I use, this contour shade. You can do this and just create a little lip line. Okay. Or you can just use any lip pencil that you have and love. I'll show you one that I like to use as well. But it's kind of nice to see how versatile all these colors are. I know it looks kind of scary right now. But then I will take Plum, which is a color very similar to my own lip coloring, and just kind of line next to that. Okay. Now let me show you the 2 lip pencils that I use that are basically those colors. So these are just NYX lip liners, lip pencils. And I have it in the shade Mauve. in the shade Taupe. So I do the same thing. I'll just do the Taupe first. It's like almost the exact same colors. And I like to do like kind of more of the Taupe right here on the insides, corners of the lips. I don't know, I just think it looks most natural to use more than one color on your lips. I feel like when we just use one color all over, that's what makes it look like, oh, we're wearing like lipstick, I don't know. And then I just kind of do the mauve color next to the Taupe. And then I will take that same ruby color I did on my cheeks, tiniest amount, because man, this is uber pigmented, it really packs a punch. And I'll just fill that in the center. And you get this really pretty, like balanced lip, ombre lip. I don't know what you want to call it, but I love it. And then I will take a gloss. I love this Fido Glow Lip Balm. It's from Naturium. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I love it. It's like a really hydrating balm. I just put this over the top. So that's one of my favorite kind of everyday lip combos. And then I will usually set everything with setting spray. I'm gonna fill in my brows real quick. I use the line brush. This is one of Saint's brushes. All of these brushes are so good. And I use this contour color. It looks black in the tin, but it's actually a dark brown. So if you're brunette, this is a really good color for you. So it's called Cola. And I always do brow wax first, like right after my skincare, and just let it dry and then fluff them up. And then I fill in with this contour shade. A lot of my clients will use the Saint eyeshadows, or they'll mix like the eyeshadows with the contours. Everyone kind of prefers something a little different for their brows. I've just always liked the look of kind of more of that like pomade brow. And so I just prefer to use the contours because they're essentially like a pomade. And then I just blend this guy. Okay. And then whenever I have lashes on, I really just like to keep my eye makeup very simple. And this is a Demi Sculpt color. This is called NV+1. Again, it looks terrifying online. Anytime I recommend it, people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's actually a neutral violet. That's what NV stands for. And here's why I love it for around the eyes, because most of us have kind of like these purpley violet tones underneath the eyes, right? Or like just kind of pinky. And so what I like about this color is when I put it along the lash line, it's kind of mimicking that same tone almost, but it just looks like I have a nice like fuller lash line. It's just such a pretty color, and I've used it on so many different skin tones when I've done makeovers, and I haven't found a person yet that I didn't like it on. So it's just a kind of a good universal shade, because I find most of us just have those tones around our eyes and our lashes, and I will just sweep this up here as well. And again, it just looks like a really natural shadow. And the Demi sculpts are a little bit more stiff in consistency than even the contours and the bronzers. So I just find they hold their shape really well. They last really well. I love them. And then I'll just take a balm or a gloss, Illuminator, you can do whatever. I just add a little extra kind of dewy glow on the high points of my face. And that's it. So we've got our 4 steps: even the skin tone, contour, sculpt around your features, add blush, and then you can do your foundation if you want, or you can use a combo of the foundation and the Demi, or just use the Demi. And I'll put all of this, I'll save this slide so you guys can reference this. And I use the color NV+1 on my eyes. So If you guys have any questions or want to get color matched, feel free to message me. And I really think you are going to love this makeup if you haven't tried it yet. Hold on, just ignore my flaky scalp. Let's zoom in. Like, do you see how just luminous and glowy my skin looks? But it doesn't look like I'm wearing this heavy makeup. It just looks like, wow, she just looks glowy. That's what we want. Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks for all your questions. If I missed any, like I said, just message me and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.